Welcome to the Did You Know podcast, where the focus is on rare diseases, how modern medicine is treating these conditions, including the latest breakthroughs in research, and how people cope with their diagnosis and healing. Your host is Dana Mauro, known for her video series on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook called Did You Know Ataxia Facts. 300 videos have been produced and seen in 17 countries to date. And now, your host, Dana Mauro.
Let's continue our conversation about what we learn from coming to events like this and actually interacting with people that have ataxia. It's very touching to hear some of the stories, and it's also very concerning to hear some of their stories and treatment that they've received, right? So I know that, Jeremy, you heard a story earlier today from someone. Want to share that with us?
It's upsetting because here we are at this walk and roll, and all these folks who have ataxia, some of whom have diagnoses and some don't. And a woman comes up to me and tells me the story about her husband who's developed ataxia, and the doctors don't know why. And she goes to see doctors, neurologists, who say giving it a name wouldn't change anything, and you're getting worse, and there's nothing I can do. And she's finding comfort in seeing apparently a very good neurological chiropractor or someone like that. But it's upsetting to me to hear that story, because knowing the diagnosis is empowering. It's the need to know imperative. I coined that phrase because I learned it from patients, that not knowing what you have is very frustrating. And having a doctor say, well, you have it, nothing I can do, is both frustrating and also very inaccurate. And so, Melissa was there with us and as we had the conversation, and just in sharing with her, this very concerned, empathetic wife of this young man, 59 by my criteria, still young enough.
He's young.
That there are things one can do to make a diagnosis. The diagnosis matters, and there are things we can do at every point along the way to improve life. And what happened then?
Oh, yeah, your story about your friend.
With this lady in this.
Even with this patient, as soon as Dr. Schmahmann talked to her about, but wait, you have options, and it is important for you to know the diagnosis, and we can provide you with these things. And there are some clinical trials, the tears. Yeah. It was very, very touching, and I even shared with this woman that, I have a friend who has multiple system atrophy of the cerebellar variety that falls within the ataxia disorders. Yep. And even for being within Massachusetts, so close to Boston, it was sort of the same experience. He was told that he had ataxia. They didn't know what type. They said it was probably rapidly progressive. They didn't really know how to diagnose him. They said there may be no way that we can diagnose you. And really, the life expectancy and they gave him a range, but there's nothing we can do. There are no treatments, and there are no clinical trials. So, they both researched this, and they were well connected with the community, and they were referred to Dr. Schmahmann. And just the tone from when they were first diagnosed to when they went to Dr. Schmahmann and then spoke with me was so different. Yeah. Because then they realized, she called me crying. It was the same exact response. And she said, wait a second, we have PT, we have speech therapy now. We actually have a support group that we've been referred to. There are other patients in the community with this disorder, but more importantly, now we know what the disorder is and what we're battling. And you know what? There are some clinical trials coming down the pike, and there are some herbal supplements, and there are some other medications that Dr. Schmahmann's going to try us on. And all of a sudden, there was hope, and there was a light, and there wasn't this feeling like they were completely isolated. Right. It is very empowering, and these patients need to know that they're part of a broad community, and it's a very, very supportive community. We just need to educate everybody and get awareness out so that these patients are referred to the people they need to be referred to, right, so that they can get the help that they need.
So that they can get the help, right. And, it's interesting, but, somebody to collaborate with somebody else that has this condition is so empowering as well, because people learn little tips and tricks for how to maneuver through their day, right? And how to get from point A to point B, or to do something. And until you meet somebody else who is dealing with the exact same thing, you don't a doctor could tell you to do certain things, and you might not be as apt to do them as you would be if you had someone else that was afflicted with the same thing telling you. Do you know, so there's certain power in getting together and sharing those stories and really learning from one another too.
That's right. And this is a really resilient group of patients and families. All the people that we meet have been incredibly inspiring to us as clinicians and researchers. And you're right, that is a critical part of it. And I think we see how important these patients are. And to speak to Dr. Schmahmann's new outcome measure that he's developing for these patients, it's been a tremendous amount of work that their group has done. Tremendous. And it's all taking the opinions of the patients to heart. What symptoms of ataxia are important to them? That's what's gone into this outcome measure. And it helps the research community as a whole. So everybody's integrated, and that's why this community is so great to work with now.
It helps it points the focus towards something, right? Because you could be working on something that people would never use, right? But if you know that they have a certain interest or a certain need in a certain area, then you can focus your energies on trying to find things that would help with that area.
Right. And just to make the point, because the podcast listeners are widespread, here in the New England area we're available. But I think that it's important for folks who are dealing with ataxia to know that there are ataxia centers or units around the country. And to bring this kind of knowledge and experience and multidisciplinary team approach to the care of the ataxia patient and their family is how this needs to be done. So we're here and available, but I'm representing the ataxia units, the centers of excellence in ataxia around the country, and the physician interface with the team interface of the National Ataxia Foundation. So in our MGH Ataxia unit in Cerebellum Institute, which has multifaceted approach to the research into diagnosis of and care of patients who have ataxia and the education both of patients and of the medical community. That's what we're doing, but we are part of a larger fabric of physicians, scientists, coordinators, therapists, nurses, caregivers around the country who are dedicated to making a difference, to make the term ataxia as well known to the general public as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and ALS. We have more ataxia patients than ALS patients, which is astounding. And it's patient focus groups and patient support groups that made ALS so well known with their bucket challenge and the rest of it.
Right.
That's what the ataxia community needs to do. There are more ataxia patients with a wide variety of diseases. I think the point also to emphasize here, which is a tough one, is we think of ataxia as problems with coordination and speech and motor control and cognition. But the reality is that ataxia kills. And people don't talk about that much. So ALS is so devastating because people die within a relatively short period of time. It's awful. When younger folks get the gene disorders that cause ataxia, they also die. We have children who've died at age 6 or in their teens with the gene disorder causing ataxia. That piece, I think, has been missing. And in addition to the hidden part about cognition in ataxia, the fact that the gene disorders that cause ataxia also cause death early on, not in everybody. Sometimes ataxia lands on your lap and it destroys the quality of life, but you still live a full life.
Right.
But there are those people who have the ataxias, some gene disorders, where it takes life. It takes life in childhood or teenage years or early adulthood. And I think that if we are upfront about that, it will raise the emotional level of engagement. This isn't just an annoyance, it's actually a real threat. And I think that's something to actually put into the process as well, that we have a battle ahead of us and we all need to join forces to win that battle.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's a really great point. Always a pleasure talking to you guys. And I learn so much every time I have the opportunity to just talk to you and others in the field. So
well, thank you for your enthusiasm and what you're doing. And really, this is fabulous.
It is a great thing. And it's getting the word out to these patients that there is hope on the horizon and there is a community out there that's there to support you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's near and dear to my heart, as you know, and one of the things that I learned after dealing with it for so long is that it's exhausting to explain to everyone that you meet what's going on. And it's exhausting when you hear someone say, "Oh, your loved one looks great. They must be getting better." You know, so there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. And it's just very complex. And so all I'm trying to do is simplify that information and get it to people so that they will get more curious about it and want to be more involved in it. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening in to the Did You Know podcast with your host, Dana Mauro. Please subscribe to this channel to hear all of the latest podcasts. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable information and inspires you to advocate for yourself and educate everyone in your circle. Remember, you are the expert and best spokesperson for your rare disease. Thank you.